Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to be hosting the 17th Annual Health Equity and Anti-Racism Research Symposium brought to you by the UCSF Office of Diversity and Outreach. I'm Jane G. I'm one of the faculty leads for this year's event. So before we open with our welcome, I'm going to go over a couple of brief announcements. So this year, we're very proud to offer translation and captioning services in the moment at this year's event in over 30 languages. To access translation or captioning, please use the QR code shown on the screen and then open your smartphone or device. Translation will appear both as captions and through audio if you prefer. Please use headphones if you're using audio translation. This is our agenda for today. We'll have 3 blocks of plenary presentations and 2 poster sessions, as well as short presentations by Mission Bay Linked Learning Hub and the NIH Diversity Supplement Program. We're excited to welcome Dr. Monica McElmore as the keynote speaker. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Renee Navarro, Vice Chancellor for Diversity Outreach, to provide welcoming remarks. Dr. Navarro.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. Wow, this crowd looks great. It's always a pleasure to be in company of this group and for this reason. So I want to wish all of you a good morning and a welcome to our 17 years annual UCSF Health Equity and Anti-Racism Research Symposium. She said, I'm Dr. Renee Navarro, and I serve as the Vice Chancellor for the Office of Diversity and Outreach, and I'm also a professor of anesthesiology and perioperative care. The Office of Diversity and Outreach is very delighted to be the key sponsor, but this is an event that is co-sponsored by many of our colleagues and groups and research entities across UCSF and UCSF Health as well. Before I begin, I would like to start with our land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the Ramaytush Ohlone people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Ramaytush Ohlone elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, the land that UCSF sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Ramaytush Ohlone community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. We would also like to and you've seen these posters, to really welcome all of you. And we've just printed, and they're there for you to take and put up in your space, that UCSF, we welcome all races, all religions, all countries of origin, all sexual orientations, all genders, all ethnicities, all abilities, all ages. All are welcome here. So we thank you for being here and hope that you feel the community of our welcome in your being here. At UCSF, we really stand behind and aspire to consistently reflect our pride principles, our pride values, and those pride values are reflected by the acronym PRIDE: professionalism, respect, integrity, diversity, and excellence. Our office, the Office of Diversity and Outreach, serves both the campus and the health system. In our office, we really seek to build, nurture, and engage a broad group, a diverse community of our faculty, staff, our students, in a welcoming and supportive climate that serves our research and education missions and also fosters culturally humble patient care and community engagement. Together at UCSF, we're on a journey of what I call continuous equity improvement. This year, our work will continue to advance the 7 pillars of our anti-racism initiative, including combating all forms of bias, bigotry, and hate with intergroup dialogue, education, accountability, and restorative justice. Our climate survey, we want to hear from members of our community. Our climate survey will launch in January of 2025. And we're continuing to advance disability inclusion along with the implementations of new policies on gender recognition, live name, and the anti-discrimination policy. But now, about today, really tantamount to our work is the work of health equity. This is our 17th year. We were formerly entitled the Health Disparities Research Symposium. We changed the name to both reflect to health equity and anti-racism 3 years ago because we wanted to reflect sort of the evolution of the research and also to more accurately reflect the ultimate goals of our work, right? We want to achieve health equity and we want to dismantle systemic racism, which presents a barrier to health equity. So now we're here and we're proud to be here. This symposium is a flagship event for the office and for the UCSF Diversity Month, which is celebrated each October. Please visit our diversity and outreach website, diversity.ucsf.edu, to learn more about our events that you could attend this month and really throughout the year. The HERE Symposium showcases an impressive range of health equity and anti-racism research from scholars across UCSF and the Bay Area, providing us with an opportunity to learn from each other, make connections, potential new collaborators, and advance common goals. This is always a wonderful learning experience, and I hope everyone can stay for the full program, which, as Jane mentioned, is a plenary and poster sessions, a keynote with Dr. Monica McLemore, presentations about the exciting new UCSF Linked Learning Mission Bay Hub, which is organized by the ODO's Office Center for Science and Educational Outreach. We have a social hour where you can facilitate your networking that's going to happen this afternoon. And then we have a screening of a new documentary film, Everybody's Work, Healing What Hurts Us, which examines the hidden disease that's plaguing healthcare in the United States, systemic racism. The screening is hosted by the UCSF School of Nursing, the We Belong initiative of UCSF Benioff Hospital, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and the Office of Diversity and Outreach. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Tung Nguyen. He's the Associate Vice Chancellor of Research, Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Anti-Racism, and he's a professor of medicine. Dr. Nguyen is a longtime partner of our office and a dedicated health equity researcher. In his new position as the Associate Vice Chancellor, I'm delighted to co-sponsor his role in advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism in our research sphere. He, along with our other two, you can sit for a second. He, along with our other two outstanding faculty leaders, Dr. Victor Fujimoto, Professor of OBGYN, and Dr. Jane G., Associate Professor of Medicine, they volunteer their time, countless hours, to make this happen. They share their expertise. They counsel, they mentor, they support year after year to make this symposium happen. We can't hold the symposium without them. So give a round of applause to Tung, Vic, and Jane. Thank you so much. And then I'd like to also extend my gratitude to the other folks that come together to make it possible. The faculty who assisted with the reviews of all these abstracts and posters, that work is critical as well, and we greatly appreciate it. And just as importantly, I'd like to thank the ODO team, and in particular, Brooks Bigart. I don't know, Brooks Bigart, thank you so much. Terry Yang, thank you so much for really heading this up with a team of others as well. So your efforts, your above and beyond responsibilities are greatly appreciated, and that's what makes UCSF wonderful. Thanks to all of you who are here as presenters today and who are committed to equity in research and patient care, and those things are really key to closing the gap. Also, thanks to everybody for being here. It's your engagement, your participation. I hope that you find the research sphere here as shared here as illuminating and inspirational as I have. Enjoy this symposium. Now, Dr. Nguyen.
Okay, I'm just telling you that I'm very impatient for health equity and anti-racism, right? We all should be, right? Thank you, Dr. Navarro, and thank you to the Office of Diversity and Outreach for providing this platform for our researchers, young and old, to talk about their work. I'm here to actually give you an update on research inclusion, diversity, equity, and anti-racism. One of the reasons to switch from health disparities to health equity and anti-racism is to acknowledge the need for interventions and to acknowledge the need for structural interventions. And I want to today show you some of the things that we're doing at UCSF on the structural work that you all can build on to do your own work. Okay, wrong button. Okay, so one of the questions that one of the fundamental questions in health equity and anti-racism work is research is who's participating in research studies, right? And one of the questions that we've asked for a long time is, how is UCSF doing in terms of diversity of research participants? And it turns out this year was the first year that we actually had a way to capture this information. This is not a complete data set. This is the NIH studies only. UCSF has a lot of funded studies that come from other funders. We're working on that in the future. But this is the dashboard that we created. You can go to bit.ly/diverse participants. And what we're showing here is the data for the last 6 years of NIH research studies at UCSF compared to the California population and US population, as just a rough way of seeing how we're doing with NIH studies. And in this particular situation, what we see here is that our Asian population is represented at a lower rate than you would expect for California, but at a higher rate than you would expect for the US. For Black and African American, the situation is reverse, higher than you would expect for California, but lower than it is for US. For Latinx Hispanic population, it's actually, we're not doing as well compared to either California or the United States. And so the main thing about this is you can actually go to this website and there are toggles on there for gender. You can look at gender. You can look at the department that you're working in. And you look at what we call clinical trials versus non-clinical trial studies. We'll continue to update this. We have planned to do this for other data systems, including Encore, REDCap, and Qualtrics in the future. Another key thing that we're trying to do here with anti-racism is to build the infrastructure to do this work. For many of you who are thinking about doing this work or already doing this work, you'll hear later today during one of the plenary session about our anti-racism and research consultation program from Dr. Jennifer James. The main thing to see here is that it's a collaboration between the ODO and our Clinical and Translational Science Institute. Biggest takeaway message is if you're not sure, and to be honest, we all should be not sure. This is a brand new field of research. There's lots of learning. We all need to do the learning no matter how well we're doing it. There is a way to get a consultation, and we can give you some ideas of how to proceed. We also have an anti-racism internal research pilot grant mechanism that's funded by all the people that you see here. We have a $10,000 partnership building award for people who are just starting out, and $50,000 research project. The last cycle just closed in September, so next cycle will be in the spring. To date, we've funded 20 projects for nearly $750,000. And again, thinking about anti-racism research, what is it? Do the consultation. Oh, I got a good idea. I got some people I want to do it with. Do the partnership building grant. So we are providing you with the infrastructure to move this forward. Workforce diversity obviously is another big area. We'll talk a little bit more later about diversity supplement. The main thing to see here is that we are doing a really good job over the last 4 or 5 years of increasing the number and the amount of money we bring in for diversity supplement. And since each diversity supplement brings with it at least one historically underrepresented research trainee, all the way from high school to junior faculty or early stage faculty, we're also not just bringing in more money, we're also training a lot more historically underrepresented people. Renee, Dr. Navarro mentioned briefly about the Mission Bay Hub, which you'll hear about a bit more later. There's a lot of activities going on here at UCSF around K-16 education. We are a partner in many of these programs because we also want people who are in K-16 diversity training programs to understand that health is a great career, health and research is a great career, and we want to give them sort of those options. So there's a Mission Bay Hub, high school summer internship, and a CURE summer research internship that's coming out of the Center for Science, Education, and Outreach. We also have a strong collaboration with Cal State, particularly San Francisco State, through a NIH-funded program, and now some institutional and state of California funded program, with the idea being We want to take historically underrepresented college students and grads and move them into health care, health career, health research. The way that we're approaching this is really different than what is traditionally considered pipeline program. Pipeline program tends to funnel people into outcomes that they want, and also they tend to look at more what we call deficit-based approaches, where you're trying to fill in the gaps that the trainees have. We take the approach of everyone who comes to our program has a lot of assets, and we should be building on the assets. And at the end, what matters is not so much what outcome we want, but what matters is what the outcome the person wants. And so it's a very different way of looking at training program, and so we use a stream metaphor as opposed to a pipeline metaphor. This is another workforce diversity training program, the Clinical Research Coordinators Learners for Equity program. Clinical Research Coordinators does a lot of recruitment of participants, so we think that by diversifying this population of workers, we also help to diversify research participants and also diversify our workforce. This is a program based with Cal State grads, community leaders, and community members. We basically give them 2 weeks of training and 20 hours of shadowing, and we pay them. So another fundamental principle of this kind of training is that people who are coming from under-resourced communities don't have the money to do volunteer work. And for them to be trained, you have to consider the economic consequences of it. It's been fairly successful. There's actually a poster later today if you want to hear more about it. Over 50% have already gotten jobs, and 20% are applying to grad school. So again, the idea that the outcome is, of course, we're trying to train clinical research coordinator. But if somebody goes through this program and end up not being a clinical research coordinator, but go to med school, nursing school, whatever, we love it too. That's a great outcome. And then the last slide I have here is that I think UCSF is a national and international leader in many health research programs, and including in diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism. So we've done actually a lot of work with the National Clinical and Translational Sciences Award. There are like 65 of these hubs across the country, and they are like the central research hub for research with human beings. And so we've done a lot of DEIA work with them. We've presented through the NIH our work on diversity and innovation. And then finally, earlier this year, we, and I say we as all of UCSF, in particular the Office of Diversity and Outreach, obtained an NIH Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Prize. There was only 5 institutions like ours that got it, and we're one of the 5 that got it. So the point to say this is that you're a part of a greater effort that's making this place better, making this country better. We are very humble in the recognition that there are so many more things that we have to do to get to health equity and anti-racism, but we're on our way. Thank you. Did forget one last thing, which is part of my job is to make sure I get to you where you are. So if you are in a department, program, whatever, want me to come and talk about what anti-racism is and some of this work and how you can collaborate, here's how to contact us.
So we just want to thank our innovator and leader tier sponsors for their commitment and support for today's activities, as well as to all our sponsors for their commitment to health equity. So I'm happy to start plenary session 1, which will feature 4 presentations. The speakers may remain in their seats and join when it's their turn. So first will be Brooks Bigart, who's playing double duty today. We're speaking about the impact of DEI diversity committee work in an academic setting, followed by Jason Phillips and Dr. Rupal Shah about patient experience at UCSF Health, and Dr. Jennifer James that will speak about the consultative service to support anti-racism research that was mentioned by Dr. Nguyen. And finally, Anya, Fang, and Hyoung Lee will speak about NHPI community health workforce with academic and community partnerships. So I'm going to invite Brooks.
Thank you, Jane. So I'm Brooks Bigart. I use she, her pronouns, and I'll be sharing my research, Sustained Care, the impact of DEI and diversity committee work on academic healthcare faculty and staff. And so it's really important if we're looking at diversity committee work in academic medicine to really center it first in recent times with the impact that the murder of George Floyd by police in 2020 had. It opened this moment of clarity and recognition by many who had not seen it before of systemic racism, anti-Blackness, and discrimination in institutions. As part of that, academic medicine and post-secondary education created DEI initiatives, and what was recommended many times is to either start or expand DEI committees. And so this research actually had 3 initial questions. I'm only going to go over briefly the data from one question: how does work in academic healthcare DEI diversity committees affect members' professional development and work-life balance? And so this research was taking place in a large academic healthcare institution, and the research was engaged in a mixed methods approach with both quantitative and qualitative data via survey and qualitative interviews. And the hope of this was really to add to the understanding of DEI work, compensation and valuation of this work, and the ability to strategically plan for equity measures and initiatives. This research quickly is really grounded in Amado Padillo's cultural taxation, Joan Trejo's work on faculty of color and minority tax in medicine, and Crisando Guarino's and Victor Borden's gender and committee work in academic medicine. And one thing to note too is that in the research that's been coming up since 2020 in the last 4 years, is that most of it really had to do with DEI committee origins and goals, the composition of committees, how to create these committees in an institution, but very little research has shown how it affects the people who are doing this work. And one of the reasons why this is important is if we look here at the figure on the left of representation of medical school faculty and staff, and we see large disparity. This is just one figure in terms of race. This is from the AAMC. The theoretical framework for this was experiential learning theory by David Kolb, intersectionality theory and retrenchment theory by Kimberly Crenshaw, and interest convergence by Derek Bell. And so the design of this, which I said before, was explanatory, sequential, mixed method research model. And this started with an online survey that was given to DEI and diversity committee members in this large academic healthcare institution. They answered anonymously and then could self-select and volunteer to do an interview, which took place over Zoom for 25 to 30 minutes with one interviewer. And the results, I'm going to go over the demographics quickly of the participants. This is just 2. A lot of data was collected from many areas of demographics. But for race, this was actually more diverse than the institution itself. And then for professional identification, there was a range of both faculty and staff. And you can see it was mid-level that was answering the most. For interview, there was actually a very broad range of identities in terms of gender identity, role, level, length of committee service, and race ethnicity. And so these are the initial findings in the survey. So really great positive impacts as a result of DEI diversity committee work. Almost 89% expanded their professional network. 86.6% said that it significantly improved understanding of diversity and inclusion principles. 73% said it enhanced interpersonal and communication skills. And 64% said it provided a sense of belonging at work. Additionally, 71% indicated an overall positive impact on their professional and career development. With this, though, there's also negative impacts. 62% said that there was no compensation for this work. 55.6% said it increased workload without commensurate benefits, and 35.6% said it hindered focus on core job responsibilities. Additionally, almost half, 48.9%, reported some negative impact on their work-life balance. And so taking all this together, we had the survey and the interview. You can take these and organize them by theme. There were 3: engagement and belonging, professional pathways, and compensation and resources. So in the first, engagement and belonging, I already remarked on these first 2 figures, but I really want to highlight especially the interviewee's own words. You feel less alone in the university in both your struggles and feelings of mutual thinking with this work. Additionally, all of the interviewees said that they had an ability to make change. So there's a sense of change agency that comes from this work. One survey respondent said, being a person from a URM, underrepresented minority, it gives me opportunity to self-empower. In professional pathways, there is a strong notice that this was increasing employee retention. 42.9% of staff interviewees noted that they had remained with the institution as a direct result of this, of their committee work. These are 2 quotes from interviewees. Every time I decide to stay, Part of the reason I chose to do so is because of that community in these spaces. And another interviewee, it's just so important for me. If not, I think I probably would have quit 10 times. Along with retention, it also has transformed careers. So in the survey, 86.7% said that this work, serving on DEI diversity committees, impacted my professional and career development in a positive manner. 62% indicated strengthened leadership and teamwork abilities. 62% reported advanced knowledge of organizational inclusivity practices. And almost 38% indicated that it developed effective conflict resolution skills. Additionally, 57% of the staff interviewed cited this work as a reason that they were either had a career change or were focusing on a career change with more equity-focused work. And then finally, in this area, professional networks and mentorship, 100% of the interviewees mentioned the building of professional relationships as a strength of their service. One interviewee said, "One of the fellows connected with me, and since then, she has introduced me to other Latina doctors, and we do lunches together. And there's so many times where something happens, and I'm just ready to quit, and then I'll text one of them, and they're like, 'No, we need you.'" And finally, in the last theme, compensation and resources, as I said before, 62% reported no compensation. In addition, 100% of interviewees said that they indicated pay as a factor in considering how the institution supports their efforts. This is one survey respondent. Mitigate the diversity tax by incentivizing service to DEIA committees or by institutionalizing the amplification of the work that it has on individuals' advancement. And finally, these figures on the left, I said these before from the survey, taken together, these can really be looked at as a sense of burnout too, though, or contributing to burnout. One interviewee said, "The fact that there's money to help us achieve things, which also achieves the university objectives, is great. When they have an agenda, they have people to help me with the work. But if it's something that we really want to happen, then it's really volunteer time." So finally, in wrapping up, there's two recommendations that institutions can take from this. One, to look at assessing and valuing the professional development benefit of DEI and diversity committee work. As one interviewee said, "I do feel like these committees brought out a leader in me that I didn't even know that I was." And also to look at and consider providing funded time or compensation to prevent burnout and expand the pool of committee members. One interviewee said, "It's just that we're overworked sometimes trying to do this committee work. It can be a lot of work that we're doing until midnight or on the weekends and things like that. It can lead to burnout, can lead to just feeling overwhelmed sometimes." And finally, in terms of continued studies, this is like a broad area that can be really investigated for benefit. These are 3 suggestions to determine if there's disparity according to race, gender, and role in the ability to access funded DEI roles, how routes of communication and access by committees to leadership differ depending on role and representation of identities, and how DEI and diversity committee work is recognized by academic medicine institutions for acceleration and promotion of both faculty and staff in a consistent manner. This work is really important. I mean, when I was conducting interviews, it really shone how much this matters to faculty and staff in academic medicine. As equity and belonging strategic initiatives are incorporated into academic medicine more and more, it's important to look at the experience and effort of faculty and staff carrying the work and how it needs ongoing valuation. Thank you so much. And we'll have our next speaker up.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jason Phillips. I'm the Associate Director of the Experience Excellence Division for UCSF Health. And
I'm Rupal, Shah, the Medical Director for Adult Patient Experience. Thank you for having us.
I'm very excited to share today some of the work that we have done over the last year in partnership with some of the people in this room and other teammates across UCSF Health and campus. So we are the UCSF Health Patient Experience team. Dr. Shah and I are leaders of that effort, and then we have other team members working on this project as well. We've also partnered with the Health Equity team. Thank you, Dr. John, for your sponsorship of this work. The data team to help us look a little deeper into patient experience data and understand the voice of our patients in a different way. And really want to thank Dr. Nguyen, Dr. G, and Dr. Rastogi as well, who was supposed to be here today to present, but he is getting married this week. So Rupal and I are representing him well, hopefully, today. So before we get into some of the findings, I wanted to just start with an overview of what are we talking about when we think about patient experience. So one definition is patient experience is the sum of all interactions, activities, and experiences that influence patient and family perceptions across the continuum of care. Another way that I like to think about patient experience is this quote from the late, great Maya Angelou, which is, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." So when we think about patient experience, there's many things that happen when someone comes to seek care at UCSF Health. I remember my own experience having surgery almost 20 years ago now, and I can't remember everything that happened, but I do remember the overall sense of that experience that I'm left with 20 years later. And I remember the parts where I felt cared for, and I remember the parts where I did not. And so this is what I like to think about when we think about patient experience and how we touch people. A little bit about how we measure or assess patient experience. And there's many different ways. Today we're going to focus mostly on the first one and do a deeper dive there into patient experience surveys. But we also have a discharge call program and have data from patients there. Patient complaints and grievances, that tells us what happens when something didn't go well. Leader-patient rounding, patient advisory councils, social media, and then observation, among others. And when we think about improvement, I like to think of it in two different buckets. And one is the operational experience. So all of the different things that might happen to someone when they're within our health system. And there's opportunity there, most certainly, for improvement and change. And then there's the human experience, and that is really how did the human interaction or connection feel to the other person. So when we were thinking about improvement, I try to balance this out and think about interventions from both of these buckets. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Shah now to finish out the details and get into the findings.
Thank you, Jason. Before I go into our results, I'm just going to give you a little more background on the patient experience survey that Jason mentioned. This is one of the ways that we measure patient experience, and for this study, we based it all on data from this survey. The survey has 21 questions. Every patient that goes to an outpatient clinic visit at UCSF Health receives this survey within 24 hours. It's available in English and a few other core languages. So if you have a preferred language that's not English, we try to get the survey in that language. You can see that patients have the option to rate us between very poor and very good. And the numbers up there are 1 through 5. On the back end, that data is converted into a 0 to 100 scale, where a score of 5 is 100 points. So when we present this data, you'll see numbers from 90s, 80s. That's because mostly we are ranking between 4 and 5. And we present to all of our frontline mean scores, so the average score that patients rank us. Why is this important? It's important for our own improvement, but all health systems across the country are measuring their patient experience and are benchmarked nationally. So we're comparing our performance to peer institutions. And you can see here that patient experience data is not normally distributed. Because most healthcare systems provide outstanding patient experience, the scores are really clumped between 90 and 100. What that means is small changes in our scores, even as small as 0.1, actually are very impactful. Okay, so let's get to this study. The aim of our study was to use patient experience data to evaluate whether there are differences in patient experience by self-reported race, ethnicity, and preferred language. And for our primary outcome, we chose 3 questions from the survey that we thought represented patient experience. 1, in the care provider communication domain, care providers' efforts to include you in decisions, and 2 that sort of represent the overall experience, including everyone worked together and likelihood to recommend. These are also questions we ask all of our clinics and our hospital systems to drive their improvement to. So these are meaningful across the health system. Where did we get the data? All completed surveys, and this study specifically focused on adult ambulatory. We hope to expand that in the future, between July 2022 and June 2023. And we adjusted the data for patient, provider, and visit level factors, as you can see. Some information about this survey: we received almost 100,000 responses. That's about 10% of all of our visits. That's about average on our response rates for these kind of surveys. You can see that we had 57,000 patients answer the survey. You notice that there's a difference in those two numbers because patients get a survey after every visit, so you could fill out 2 or 5 or up to 16 surveys a year. Looking at our demographics of who responded to the survey compared to our overall population of who we serve, I know there's a lot of numbers up there, but the take home of this is that we have overrepresentation on the survey of white, older, and English-speaking patients. And this is always a limitation of real-world data where we are entirely dependent on patients voluntarily providing us feedback. So you can imagine for a variety of reasons there may be overrepresentation of certain groups on the survey. So moving on to our results, you can see here in this table, in the rows are the 3 questions that I said that we focused on, and the columns are self-reported patient race and ethnicity. You can see that our scores are lower in our Black, African American, as well as our Asian patients, where our scores are higher in our white and Latinx patients. And when we looked at the same data by preferred language, you again see that there are several groups that rate us lower in the provider communication question, and in particular, our Cantonese-speaking patients have a lower experience across all 3 domains. And then we looked at the interaction between race, ethnicity, and preferred language. And you can see in both our white and Asian groups, when you don't prefer English, you prefer another language, you have an even lower reported experience. So our key takeaways are our Asian and Black African American patients have a lower experience than the overall population. In addition, our Cantonese preferred patients have a lower experience across all 3 domains. And when we look at the interaction between race, ethnicity, and preferred language, the impact on patient experience is even more dramatic. As I said, there are limitations to this type of data. The survey is not completely representative. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're very excited to have this data, but we recognize this is only the first step and that we need additional analyses, but also qualitative data, really talking to patients and leveraging their input to drive improvement. Thank you so much for your time and attention. There'll be questions at the end.
All right. Good morning, everyone. That's me. Great. Hi, everyone. Said hi twice. I'm Jen James. I'm a sociologist, and I'm an associate professor in the School of Nursing. And I'm so excited to be here. So the abstract was originally submitted by Jeff Nicholas. He also put together a bunch of the slides. But he did the very, very rude thing of graduating, finishing his PhD, getting a job doing health equity research on the East Coast. So rude. So I'm giving this talk instead. My disclosure is I'm talking about work that UCSF is paying me to do, which is both great. UCSF is investing in anti-racism. Also feels a little bit like I'm doing an infomercial versus a research talk, which is odd, but I know that it was scored and reviewed just like a regular abstract, so I don't think that there's something funny going on here. But I'm really gonna give you an overview of the consultation service and what we can do. I had originally written a much, much longer talk where I gave you this beautiful thing of how the journey of how your research can be shaped and changed by anti-racism frameworks. I don't have time for that, so if you want that talk, let me know. It's 4 hours long, no, maybe 45 minutes, and I can come give it to you. So as we've already talked about this morning, over the last several years, UCSF has really been investing in anti-racism. We have an anti-racism initiative, we have these 7 pillars, and this work is especially falling under the idea of equity in research. Folks also probably remember a few years ago, there was a task force formed on equity and anti-racism in research led by Tung Nguyen and Monica McLemore that put out a series of recommendations of how we can really think about doing more anti-racist and anti-racism research here at UCSF. We put out a series of recommendations This is the report. Highly recommend, if you haven't checked it out, to check it out, which were shared with the community to get feedback. And I think that through this process over these years, we've learned a lot about why we need anti-racism research. So folks, people have probably seen this paper before that looked at how much racism was coming up in the health sciences sort of pre-2020. And you can see if you look that it was like not very much, like JAMA. It's like, oh wow, it came up once in like all of these years. And suddenly in 2020, after the murder of George Floyd, after the racial reckoning, racism became a topic that we were allowed, quote unquote, to use in the health sciences and academic medicine. That was really exciting, I think, for those of us who've been talking about racism anyway and who were told it's not scientific or it's too political, the realization that this is important, critical work to health and should be something we center, right? We've also seen that the NIH has said, oh, we're going to fund research that's explicitly about health equity and anti-racism, which is really exciting. There are more opportunities to get work funded in this space. A question I get all the time. People say, how do you balance doing work that's fundable versus doing work like this? And my answer is like, this work is fundable first, and like we get to decide what's fundable. We all review, we all put the grants in, so just do it. But we know that that's actually not necessarily easy. It's really easy for me to be like, just do this work. There's a lot of barriers, right? So the grant process overall isn't necessarily designed for anti-racism. So I face like a lot of barriers with people not necessarily knowing how to review the grant, not knowing how to give feedback, not understanding the integration of social theory into science, and even really basic things like I'm working with a community partner organization. This is the list of all the things they need to be able to provide to me before a grant goes in, and like, how does the timing work? Anti-racism work, I think, often is slow. It's done with people. It's based on community need. It's based on investment. That doesn't necessarily align with like, oh my gosh, this grant's coming up. We need to turn all this around in 2 weeks. What are we doing, right? So that's tough. We know that this research often takes longer. It's not necessarily, we've been doing racism for 400 years in this country. It takes a little bit of time to do anti-racism, right? So a 1-year, yeah, right. So a 1-year pilot grant, you're not gonna necessarily solve stuff, or it takes time to build the relationships that you need, and that this work should be more expensive. Now, I don't need to buy semiconductors, is that a thing? Like my research is a lot cheaper than a lot of research that happens on this campus, but doing anti-racism survey or interview-based research is, and will likely be, if you're doing it right, more expensive than otherwise, right? Because you're investing in community, you're bringing new voices, there's additional training, you're thinking about things differently. Ideas of publish or perish is really antithetical to this work. The idea that you should publish instantly as soon as you have something to say, as much as you can, to the highest impact journals you can, might not meet the needs of the work that you're doing, might not speak to the audiences with whom you want to be in conversation, and might mean you're rushing to get stuff out before you're coming to conclusions together with partners. And then we know that most places don't have an infrastructure to support this. I think we're lucky here that UCSF is investing, but this isn't the norm, and that means that most of us were not trained, when we were growing up in academia and doing anti-racist work. I also wanted to note that there was this idea that came up a couple years ago from Elle Lett and Monica McLemore, who maybe is in this room, but will be in this room very soon, if not right this second, on health equity tourism. So as we saw this increase, and now it's okay to say racism in your publications, now there's research, dollars available in this space, a lot of people have been wanting to reframe their work to be about health equity. And I have mixed feelings on this idea. I think health equity work should be everyone's work. It's not something that only Black people should be doing, only people of color should be doing. All of us need to be thinking about this. But I do think we need to think really carefully about how do we make sure that people are doing it in a way that is responsible, is responsive, is drawing on the decades of research that have been done in this space, and is citing, hashtag Cite Black Women, is citing the people who've been doing this work for a long time, right? So here comes this consultation service. We know that there's a need. There's more opportunities to do research in this area. There's a need, obviously, for work focused on racism, but we maybe have this gap of people who haven't been trained, don't know how, and haven't had infrastructural support to do it. So last summer, is when I was asked to sort of step into this role in partnership with the ABCR Idea Office and CTSI and ODO to build off other consultation services that exist. Most folks are probably familiar, CTSI, You can go and be like, hi, I need a biostatistician, and they'll be like, here you go. And you can get help with a lot of areas in research. Growingly, there's a lot of work there focused on community-engaged research, with a goal of how can we identify folks on campus who know how to do this and partner them with people who are new to this work to expand their knowledge, engage with anti-racism, epistemologies and methodologies, and ideally be able to submit grants, write papers, and do, and engage in research that is based in anti-racism principles. Yeah, that's what that slide's about. So what is anti-racism research? So this is a list of just a whole bunch of random anti-racism theories, frameworks, and methodologies. There are a lot. While this work, I think, is in some ways new and maybe feels new to people in the health sciences, people in a lot of fields, like my field of sociology and education and social work, have been doing research, thinking about anti-racism for decades. So there's actually a lot to build on. Again, I have a whole PowerPoint that goes through each of these and what they offer and how to use them. So if you want to learn more, we're in the process of developing more curriculum on selecting an anti-racism methodology and what they add and where it's appropriate, what types of research. So I'm happy to talk more about this. But the point is, there is a lot out there to support doing work differently. And there's a few key components that I think about. So I think a big one is a shift. This is also to show a shift, but PowerPoint limitations. From documenting disparities, we talked about how this used to be the Health Disparities Research Symposium, and we shifted to being the Health Equity Anti-Racism Symposium, right? We're not just documenting what's worse for people in this country, and we're thinking about how we interrogate oppression and power. How do we understand and then intervene on systems of oppression? It's moving from ideas of objectivity to reflexivity. There's no such thing as objective research. That is always false in all kinds of research, and it's sort of acknowledging and thinking about how we reflect it. It's moving away from individualistic, I'm the PI, this is my research, I'm important, give me my awards, to thinking about how we share power, how we share data, being a community with others. It's moving from a deficits-based approach, what's wrong with this population that they're getting sick and dying, to thinking about strengths, what is the wisdom, knowledge, expertise in this community we can draw from and learn from. And I think the biggest thing is it's moving away from this is what research is. This is what it looks like. This is how a paper is written. This is how a grant is structured. This is how we fund people. This is what the scientific method always looks like, to critiquing ourselves, our institutions, and research the way it's always been done and noting the harm that it's caused. So we launched this service. This is a timeline. Back to 2020, started thinking about anti-racism. We launched the service. We did a soft launch last spring to coincide with the RAP grant cycle. And so in that time, we did 9 consultations, and the few weeks leading up to that, we ended up having, I think, the most applications for RAP grants, for the anti-racism RAP grant we've had, which is great. From across campus, lots of different people, some people who needed a lot of support with anti-racism, some people who knew a lot about anti-racism and needed a lot of support with grant writing, which was great. And everyone liked it. We had charts, but they were just full green circle. Yes, it was great. But people felt like we were able to help people hone their research questions, strategize how to talk about anti-racism with community partners and build community partnerships, how to craft a language, how to sort of take a framework and apply it methodologically to use effectively in a grant. And then people want more. People, we have a lot of, we're an NIH grant machine on this campus. We have a lot of materials of here's all these examples for you to submit. But a lot of them aren't using this. People want more examples of anti-racism that they can draw from. They want more folks who can help review and provide stuff on their grants. So this is where I'm going to wrap up. But I'm just going to note, I'm always skeptical. So there's a lot of people in this room I trust immensely. I don't trust institutions. I don't trust UCSF. We were built as a white supremacist organization. Academic medicine is a white supremacist organization. And so I always get nervous about approaches that are reformist and that are rather than transformational, rather than abolitionist. So my big concerns is I want to make sure we're not making anti-racism a checkbox. I don't like the model of you can put an anti-racism person on your grant 5% and now it's anti-racist. No, I think you have to fundamentally transform how you do the work. I totally call myself an expert in this because that's what we're taught to do in academia, but the idea of expertise that is centered within our institution rather than shared in community makes me uncomfortable and is kind of antithetical to anti-racism. So there's things about that model that are weird. And then this is a very individual focus. This is how do we take you, researcher, and help you to get grants so that you can publish? How are we thinking about structural systemic change? Are we changing the institution while we're doing it? We need to keep thinking about that all the time. QR code, reach out. Help me, let me help you, whatever you need. Let's be in touch. Thank you.
We love you, Dr. James. We're so inspired. Good morning, everyone. Hi. Joe Lee, I use he, him pronouns, currently serve as lecturer at UC Berkeley. I also serve as an advisor for this wonderful pathway program that we're going to be talking about shortly, and founder and principal consultant of Community Health Synergy. And I'm going to have Anya introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm really honored to speak about this work today. My name is Anya. I use she, her pronouns. I'm currently a master's in public health student at UC Berkeley. I also help to coordinate the Pathways in AA and HPI Community Health Initiative under the Asian American Research Center at UC Berkeley, as well as the Certificate in Asian American Community Health.
Thanks, Anya. All right, on the next slide. We'd like to, thank you. We'd like to start this presentation with an important lesson that our founder of the Asian American and Pacific Islander Health Research Group and Third World Liberation Front advocate, Dr. Marilyn Wong, has taught hundreds of students, and Anya and myself, throughout her career, and that is history is the ultimate social determinant of health. As most of you know, history sheds light on the root causes of present-day health disparities and poor health outcomes that we see for specific Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities, as well as for other underserved and under-resourced communities. As Dr. Rakaija Yerby from St. Louis University have taught us, we must acknowledge racism and discrimination as root causes and reasons behind the creation of unjust economic and social policies and inequitable power distribution that have been enabled through law. And these political processes have created systems that we live and work within today that influence the health and well-being of our communities. So Anya and I are incredibly excited to tackle Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander health disparities throughout our current work and expansion of a pathway program that is designed to create a culturally and linguistically responsive Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander health and social care workforce. This is a pathway program that's rooted in research, student leadership, and innovative community partnerships, and everyone in this program has a dedicated passion to advance Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander health equity. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Anya, who will share more about this pathway program known as PATCH for short.
Thank you. So in response to AA and NHPI health disparities, the Pathways for AA and NHPI Community Health Initiative, otherwise known as PATCH, was launched in 2020 to develop the next generation of community health leaders. This initiative involved the creation of an advisory board that brought together community and campus representatives to identify gaps in workforce development and collaborate on potential solutions. Today, we'll be providing an example of one of PATCH's initiatives in partnership with the Certificate in Asian American Community Health Program at UC Berkeley, which is hosted under the Asian American Asian Diaspora Studies program at UC Berkeley. This program aims to equip students with comprehensive knowledge of historical and contemporary AA and HPI community health issues. As part of our collaboration with the PATCH Initiative, we designed a 15-week-long field study course that would expose students to workforce pathways and prepare them for future careers with our partner organizations. And I'll be turning over to Joe to talk more about this program.
Thanks, Anya. So there are three critical partners in this pathway program. One, namely students. So this students have really been in the most integral part of this program. Their leadership, their thoughtful, their innovative thinking around the design of the curriculum and content of our curriculum, and to help shape our goals of the workforce development, their involvement has been incredibly imperative. And we also like to acknowledge the community that has served as a critical partner, and namely community-based organizations, federally qualified health centers, and local safety net hospitals. hospitals. Organizations like Asian Health Services, Asian Immigrant Women Advocate, and SF Chinese Hospital. These community-based organizations have been really critical partners to help host internships and to provide career exposure activities and to host site visits and participate in career panels. And last but not least, we have UC Berkeley, our university, particularly the Asian American and Asian Diaspora Studies program and the Asian American Research Center. They've been really critical partners to provide funding for student stipends to be able to participate in research projects and internships and to help cover transportation costs, especially when we need to travel across the Bay Area. And the university has been a really critical partner in co-hosting conferences and symposiums to celebrate the work and to amplify the work that we've been doing in this program.
Great, and so what I'll talk about next is just a little bit about how the program has been doing. So as a result of these partnerships, the field study has grown from being able to support 3 students in 2021 to now 10 students this year. Given that student enrollment in the certificate has been increasing over the past few years, our goal is to further expand the field studies capacity so we can continue supporting students interested in AA and HPI community health.
These are some really great quotes that were provided to us by the student participants and some of the alumni. You can see here that the quotes really reflect some of the gratitude that the students have shared to our guest speakers and the community health leaders that they've interacted with in career panels and site visits. For our students, they feel reassured to hear our community health leaders' stories, and many of them shared similar backgrounds and challenges that the students are experiencing in their academic journey. And the second quote on the bottom, this is a reflection of a field study trip to SF Chinese Hospital, and one of the students noted how this was one of their most favorite experiences and how it was really incredible to learn about not just how a hospital system works and the services and programs that they implement, but how they're just rooted in history and why they had to exist in the first place, to be able to create culturally and responsive care opportunities for Chinese and other Asian immigrant and refugee communities. So these are some of the quote, and that's a fun picture. After doing these field studies, we like to get some snacks, explore SF Chinatown, and bond and do some social activities. So it's a fun photo on the right hand side.
And in addition to the site visits that we offer, students especially enjoyed getting to work directly with community health organizations, as this allowed them to gain various skills, build strong professional connections, and cultivate a shared sense of community and purpose, which is really crucial when doing this work. Students also had the opportunity to present their work to broader audiences, such as yourself. For example, this first photo showcases a student presenting their health education work with Asian Health Services within a symposium at UC Berkeley. The second photo here features our students, Ali Hyoung and Ashley Tsai, who are actually joining the symposium today to present a poster on their work with conducting technology literacy workshops with the Asian Immigrant and Women Advocates organization. And lastly, what we'd like to just discuss are some challenges and lessons learned, as well as future directions around navigating partnerships when building this type of program. To highlight some challenges, it has been critically important to prioritize the interests of both students and community partners early on. Otherwise, it can be challenging to create meaningful learning opportunities that also benefit the communities we're serving. Another key challenge is addressing barriers that may prevent students from being able to engage in community health work and pursue career opportunities. For example, it's been crucial for students to have access to financial resources, social support, and opportunities to co-design their learning experiences. Overall, there is also a need for more equitable representation of AA and HPI communities within the student populations they serve and curriculums we design.
All right, we got the 1-minute warning. Okay, so some of the strategies for success and some of the future directions that we're excited to share with you all. We're really excited to expand this pathway program to reach high schools as well as health professional schools, including social work and nursing. We continue to believe that our partnerships with community-based organizations and with student-led organizations have been really integral to the success of this program. We really appreciate the mentorship and the direct access to career opportunities with our partners. And we also believe that the practice of community-based research, implementation of evidence-based interventions that students and early career professionals are able to do that really improve outcomes for our clients and patients served in this program, such as motivational interviewing and empathic inquiry, has been incredibly effective and rewarding for the students. And COVID has really brought this to light. We need to continuously be mindful of the social determinants of health experienced by our students and how these determinants impact their academic performance, access to higher education, and meaningful career opportunities. And we believe our pathway program serves as a good model for this. And the very last slide is just our acknowledgement and thanks and gratitude to many co-authors, partners, and sponsors of this pathway program. Their names and entities are listed here. And I know Dr. Tung Nguyen was part of one of our sponsors and guest speakers in the past for this program. And I know there are a few individuals in this room that we saw earlier today. So thank you for your partnership and leadership in this work. Thank you, everyone.
So thank you to all the speakers for session one. We're going to invite the speakers to join us at the panel seating in front here for a moderated Q&A. So we have two team members that'll be walking around with a microphone. So we invite any questions as everyone gets assembled here. Would anyone like to start? Oh, we see a hand up there. When you rise, please state your name and then your affiliation and your question.
Hi, my name is Ada Robinson, and I work at Children's Hospital in Oakland. I'm a NICU nurse. I actually think I was referring more to the study that was done on the staff that are involved in the councils. I was literally in a meeting yesterday with some of my council members in the Chicanx Latinx Campus Association. I'm one of the co-chairs. And we were having the same conversation that there's lack of compensation. There's an additional workload. It's heavy on us emotionally, physically, home life versus work life. So what are we doing about it? You know, how are we going to assist our members in feeling their value with all of the extra work we do? Even if you are, if you work daily, you know, in an office. I'm personally in the NICU. When I'm at work, I can't do council work. I can't go to meetings. So that's really difficult. So everything I do is on my day off or after work. So I do know that they're aware of it. Many people are aware of it, that this is like a bias between, you know, that we have, an inequity more than anything. So how do we help even nurses? I think that when you're at the bedside, you can't do all this other stuff. How do we assist them in being able to do more work? How do we encourage them to come and do the work? And it's in addition to. But basically, what are we doing to help the council members that are a part of all of these, you know, initiatives and all of this extra work that we're doing?
Well, thank you, number one, for your service on committees. I mean, that's actually incredibly important. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to actually start this research, and there was more done. There's more research questions related to it. I can speak from my research. I'm not representing UCSF institutionally, but I can say that the recommendations at the end, especially at looking at and what came out in the research, was the idea that for funded research, for funded roles, that can make a difference, and especially thinking of what Dr. James said in terms of looking at how the system is not just having kind of Band-Aids. So when DEI work is part of funded roles, that actually helps to have that inequity. And I hear you saying too, especially that there's different roles that are really outside of this. So where does that time from come? One thing that came up there was a great suggestion, this was part of my thesis work actually, was from a committee, one of my thesis chair members, and they had the suggestion of looking at committee members who could actually be from the community. It breaks down that level too of hierarchy, and that there could be a way for institutions in academic medicine or elsewhere to actually involve community members as part of these diversity and DEI committees, and paid, and always paid, but also that starts spreading the burden. So that's one solution. There's obviously many more.
Thank you. So one thing I neglected to mention is, I know we're a little bit behind schedule, sorry about that. So we'll probably go to about between 55 and the top of the hour, and then break for the poster session. So we have about a little under 10 minutes. Anyone have a question? I can go ahead and ask one while we, do you have a question? Oh, do we have a microphone?
I think it's a good place to jump in because it's similar to that question. And mostly for, oh, yes. Hi, my name is Dan Cabela. I'm a postdoctoral fellow with the Center for Tobacco Control Research and Education. And this is mostly for Brooks and Jennifer, but you all too who are doing this important work, so thank you. So, you know, you mentioned this, the slow work of anti-racism is not compatible with these never-ending productivist cycles that we're all wrapped up in, and our promotion packages don't reflect this. As you pointed out, our productivity is only measured by our publications. But I think this is a much larger structural issue that feels untouchable. However, it's an important conversations to have regularly rather than just at these symposiums. So what do you suggest, how do we take, you know, actionable steps within like the very close networks that we're involved in, you know, our departments, our labs, these kind of ways to kind of shift this this narrative and change the culture and kind of emphasize the legitimacy of this important work?
Well, that was a very big question. I don't know. No, I mean, I think that's it. You know, last year I was at a talk that Amy Medeiros gave, and she used this example, which I'm just gonna like describe, and then you can Google and find it, which were like the poison bottles of white supremacy. Have people ever seen this? It has like all these different like poisons, and it's like, and when she gave this talk, which was talking about white supremacy more broadly, I was like, oh my gosh, all of these are academia. And it was like urgency and like, you know, objectivity and like, you know, how we think about expertise and who we center. And there's so much about the way that we work that feels so driven by white supremacy, obviously by ableism, obviously by classism. And I feel like we both need to like take the steps to say who gets promoted and why, how are we measuring that, what counts, which I know there's been a lot of work on. How do we think about community engagement and diversity work and public scholarship as a part of our promotion packages? So those are structural things we need to do. And then I always find myself really struggling, and I don't know if others do too, with like the balance of like, I was brought up in that, so I constantly feel this sense of like urgency, gotta do this, and oh my gosh, and how do I not pass that on to my mentees? How do I set people up for success in this institution being broad, academia, the way it is, while also saying, how can we do things that are different? And I think that's an area where I really struggle, is I want to be like, yep, gotta get the grants, gotta be publishing, have to do this, but also why? Do you need to be doing that? Take care of yourself, take breaks. And that I think is really hard to do. So I feel like I'm hopeful that we're like in this moment where more of us are thinking about it, where we're creating the infrastructure to set up to do things differently, where we're acknowledging that doing work where you're feel beholden to your community means that sometimes the first thing you're doing is sharing back your data with them rather than publishing in JAMA, and that like that should be taken into account. But I'm just saying that I think it's really hard to break that cycle with that we have all, the people who are here because you were able to do it and be successful, and it's hard to break out of that. So no answer at all, is basically. Yeah.
There's a hand back. There's two hands, okay.
No.
We could have the other questioner, and then we can move back to you if that's okay.
Hello, my name is Alex. I'm a student attending the Mission Bay Hub, representing June Jordan School for Equity, and a current high school student with a dream to advocate for the AIPI health community with a dream of for my community. As a student, I have always wanted to create a change and create a big impact, especially as a high school student. And I was wondering, how would you suggest that we begin to advocate for these issues, even as a young crowd, to be able to speak among, just being able to, connect with other people, to be able to make connections, to network, to be able to, have a voice within this issue? How is it that we could try and adjust this systemic thing that is rooted within our communities?
That's such a wonderful question. Thank you so much for asking that question. Something that we've learned from our students is something that we learned to be a critical lesson for our pathway program is to really ensure that we're opening the doors of as many opportunities as possible for them. We highly encourage you to work with your teacher, your faculty, connect with your own family members, your friends, and really ask the question: what opportunities are there to do health equity advocacy work? And something that we continuously ask our students and our alumni, and they continuously ask us, what opportunities are there? When you don't ask, you really just kind of eliminate your chances of really gaining an opportunity. We had a mentor in the past who used to say, network or don't work. And you really need to talk to someone and kind of really let the magic of planned happenstance. If you just take action, practice curiosity, take a risk, and really ask the questions, what opportunities there are out there, whether it's volunteer work or paid work, and really kind of trusting in the people that you trust, those opportunities can happen for you. And so feel free to come up to us afterwards, to myself and Anya. We're happy to share some opportunities that we know that are happening currently. Anya, any reflections?
Yeah, I'll just quickly add, and thank you so much for your question. The certificate program was actually created from just the idea of some undergraduate students who weren't seeing the opportunities for themselves within UC Berkeley for this type of education, so they created it themselves. So my biggest advice is just don't be afraid to, spearhead your own opportunities if you aren't seeing them wherever you're at.
Thank you.
That one's better. Good morning. I'm Leanna Lewis. I'm the Associate Director over at the UC Berkeley UCSF Joint Medical Program. Thank you all for your presentations. Dr. James, I think my question for you is, do you have thoughts about how we bridge the piece of wanting to have more anti-racism and equity included across research, right? Not having it put in one small area, right, and saying it's applicable to everything, and having that be done in a meaningful way and teaching it in a meaningful way so that we do become a different generation of researchers rather than replicating ourselves. Or I don't know, I share your skepticism and worry, am I part of creating the checkbox? Am I just educating a new generation of folks to think of anti-racism as a checkbox, and how do we resist that?
No,
So easy, small question.
Easy, small question. No, exactly. I think about it all the time, because it's like you can make a mandatory training, but it's like, when I talk to people, are like, oh my gosh, I have to do RCR again this year. So we don't want to make it a thing that you have to learn and feels like a chore and you don't actually take seriously and you don't want to integrate, right? And I think that there are. So when the task force put out its recommendations a few years ago, and we sent them out to the UCSF community broadly defined, there was recommendations that all research should involve anti-racism. All research should be anti-racist. And there was pushback on that. People felt like it may be illegal because of who knows why, that's discriminatory against white people, there's no racism. There was weird stuff. But then people are like, what does this have to do with my work? I do things on mice in labs. And I'm like, I don't understand that work, so maybe you're right. I don't do anything with rodents, thankfully, in my job. But I think that there's both values of I think that there's a place for saying if your work is going to impact humans, you have to think about power, and that none of our work will be effective if we don't. So it doesn't matter how great your intervention is, it doesn't matter how awesome like the new drug you develop is, if people can't get it because of our segregated healthcare system, because of the fragmented nature of how we pay for healthcare, because of classism, because of transportation, because hurricanes are destroying everywhere they live, like it doesn't actually matter. So I feel like some of this comes from, like, we have to teach it from the very beginning that this influences health across the life course, across every disease, across all of our work, and hope that people understand that. And then also, yeah, I think it can't be an add-on. It can't be like you can take a bonus elective where you think later about anti-racism and you have to redesign and rethink everything you've ever learned. It has to be from the outset that when you're learning this is how we do science, it means this is how you talk to community so you understand their priorities. It means this is how you think about, you know, the history. This is how you think about power. This is how you understand, you know, oppression and what that will mean for this thing you're studying. So I think doing it earlier and often, which I think we have an advantage now. I think more and more of our students coming here learned about this in undergrad. They like have been watching TikToks on this like for years and years now. And so I think we have that as a starting place, which hopefully will make it easier as we began to do this from the outset versus now when we're doing it a little bit after the fact.
Great. I'm going to ask the last question before we break. So this is for Rupal and Jason. We've talked a lot about anti-racism, transformative change. What do you think, what transformative change does UCSF Health need to engage in to really bridge those gaps in patient experience?
Yeah, another easy question.
You want to go first? Do you have something in mind?
I could think of something.
Go ahead.
Go first.
So that's a big question. I'll talk about it through the patient experience lens because that's the lens I'm most familiar with, although I think it could be discussed through a variety of different lenses. I think the work that we're starting to do a little deeper, I think will help us in this journey, which is really listening to the patient voice in a way that we haven't done before, considering the impact of all the decisions we make, and do we have all of the right information? Do we have representative perspectives on what the impact of that might be on patients and their families? And we're, you know, we have for years been thinking about and talking about how to do this better. And we have a lot of work to do on really understanding the variety of people that we serve and how we can best make sure that they access the health system. I guess I would start there. There's a whole access piece. And then there's once they're in the door, how do we make sure that their journey is the best it can be for that person and their needs?
I'll give, I think Jane referenced transformative change, and I think we all said that change happens slowly. As a physician, I think a lot about the communication that we have with our patients. So from this work, actually showing that patients with preferred languages other than English have a more challenging experience, we've moved forward with making interpreter documentation mandatory across the health system in our ambulatory clinics. That's one small step to remind our providers that our patients who who prefer languages other than English need interpreters. We're climbing a mountain here one step at a time, but I think as I think about globally changing the landscape so that we are not only communicating in languages patients prefer, but through a lens of cultural competency, we're starting this one step at a time. And I think, as Jason said, the only way we can do that is bring patients who have been historically underrepresented to the table. And we know that our data is limited in terms of the representation, but amplifying the voice of those who are least represented in our survey. This is one piece of that, but there's a lot more work to be done to bringing people, partnering with community-based organizations and patients to really understand what the challenges are. So I think first, we're in a mindset of humble inquiry, and then we're gonna move towards transformative change with your help, Dr. G.
All right, thank you so much to our first session presenters. So I'll now invite you to join us in the atrium for a really great poster session. Please peruse and visit and network with each other, and we'll return back to this room to start session 2 at about 10:25 a.m. Thank you.